Hello, Awesome Soul here, and to quickly get into it, in the last video, you'll remember that we discussed the changes that were coming up to the cosmetics in the game. And a little bit before that video was scheduled to go live, they actually posted a GIF on Twitter of what one of these special effects is going to look like. So as a little follow-up to that video, here you are. So what I'm kind of speculating this is that it's probably going to play this animation when you get a kill, and maybe when you capture the base as well. Because I highly doubt that this is going to be player controlled, because if it is going to be player controlled, I can foresee this being spammed constantly. And yeah, that would get a little bit annoying to other players, I'm quite sure. The animation you saw was rather clearly a full mask configuration. So how exactly is this going to work if you have all of the mask parts on your bot, but don't have them configured in the proper shape? Is it still going to play the animation? Do you need at least one of the parts of the mask on your bot? Maybe you'll get more of a faint animation? Or do you need all of the parts on the bot? Or, even more so, do you need all of them in the specific configuration? Personally, I don't think it really matters if it's in the configuration, only because that would mean they would have to actually code in the ability for the game to know that these mask parts are where they should be. But hey, that's certainly not out of the question. Anyways, now we go on to what I actually wanted to discuss in this video. And that is that I've kind of been doing some building and tweaking around of things in my garage. And I've come up with sort of a little quick list of things that kind of need improvements. And the first one is something that you probably have never heard before. I've never actually seen this idea posted anywhere, so if you guys think this is a good idea, let me know. Before I get into that, I sort of have to explain why I think this. So the bot you see before you is the Tempest 2L, the new and improved version of my old Tempest bot that I'm sure most of you will remember. It was a ton of fun to play. Unfortunately though, recent updates have not been very kind to it. What with the huge nerfs to sprinter legs, and the fact that the Tesla blades have been kind of nerfed to hell. The reason they were nerfed, the shurikens, are definitely a thing of the past now. Pretty sure it's safe to say they can get their armor back now. But anyways, so I took the electroplates off because really, in my opinion, if your health boost is under 45%, really there's no point in using electroplates. If you go above 45%, then you can strap on electroplates. That's my general rule. So I took them off, added in some more cubes, took it from 23% health boost to 28% health boost. But this thing's still sticking around 1330 CPU, I think. So that doesn't really give it a huge amount of damage boost. And if you take a look at the bot, you'll note that the weapons are a huge sink of the CPU. That is where a large majority of this thing's CPU is loaded into. Because both of the weapons, they're 250 CPU a pop. So that is 500 CPU just for weaponry. And this thing is actually fairly light on weaponry. Really, the only offensive weapons it has are the mega lasers and then the Teslas. And as I'm sure you're seeing throughout this match, this bot is very frail. Because one, it's got sprinter legs, which are kind of the most underpowered movement part at the moment, aside from skis, and its frame is fairly small because I wanted to keep with a low profile. And another good portion of the CPU, 200 of which, is actually sunk into the propellers, one of which is actually providing a traditional speed boost, and the other one on top is not providing a speed boost stat per se, but it is still providing a considerable speed boost when you jump. So that is actually a pretty good setup, and I'm quite happy with it. But with all the CPU spent on speed boost, which arguably isn't really giving a huge amount of speed boost for the CPU you're spending on it, we're kind of left with only a very select few amount of cubes, which results in a rather low armor boost. So I kind of toyed around with the idea of taking the mega lasers off and then putting on regular laser disintegrators. But then I asked myself, why exactly should I have to do that? Because it really ruins the aesthetic that I'm going for. And I mean, mega lasers should be a viable part on their own, should they not? The damage boost certainly helped, but it's not necessarily mega lasers, it's really all of the large weapons in general. Though the lasers, plasmas, and rails are the best example of this, simply because you can go ahead and strap on 4 of the largest non-mega variants, and you will have nominal count, very good damage, and you will be at far less CPU. Additionally, you will also have a much smaller hitbox for your weapons, and therefore they will be a lot more difficult to take out. But say you want to scale it up. So you scale it up to a mega laser or a mega plasma or a mega rail. What exactly are you getting here? Well, you're getting a much higher CPU cost. And more armor, of course. But it's not really all that proportional, because this thing is a huge goddamn target. It's a bullet magnet, essentially. So for the CPU you're spending on it, the armor it has isn't exactly worth it. The damage output it has, while it's fairly high, is not necessarily worth the huge CPU jump. Additionally, because these things cost so much CPU, you're getting a much lower damage boost stat on top of that. So what I'm proposing here is make these weapons more of the tank guns that they're meant to be. As Mark has said a few times before, when it came to this recent update, he wanted to have big weapons on big robots and make that viable. You know, like big tank guns. But it's very hard to be a tank if most of your CPU is going into, arguably, something rather inefficient. So what I'm proposing here, for the Mega Laser, the Mega Plasma, and the Mega Rail in particular, more so than some of the other ones, just simply because they do have the lower size option, is that either they gain a armor boost to them, which was my initial choice, just because, again, this Tempest bot is very lightly armored, or they could also gain a built-in damage boost stat to offset the fact that this costs so much CPU. I also did think about giving it to some of the other heavy weapons, I guess we can call them. So Lommel, Chain Shredder, Ions, etc. But I don't really think they need it too much. I think they could kind of use it, but definitely nowhere near as large of a boost as the other 3 I mentioned. The Mega Laser, Mega Plasma, and Mega Rail. Chain, though, definitely does have its problems, and I've discussed those in a few other videos before. But to quickly touch on that, it uses too much power. Mainly the spin-up time. If you take away the huge power usage for the spin-up time, the weapon might be a bit more viable. Some of the other things I've noticed is the Ion line. The Ion Distorter, the large one, is perfectly fine and still fairly viable. However, the Ion Destabilizer, the smaller variant, is, as I'm sure most of you would agree, one of, if not the most underpowered weapons in the game right now. There is really no reason to use them over their larger variant, because 1, the size decrease is not really that substantial. Even the smaller versions actually take up quite a bit of space. On top of that, they do have a nominal count of 4, so you need to pack 4 of these things onto your robot, and usually they end up looking rather weird. Not only that, they fire less pellets and therefore do less damage, but they have pretty much the same spread as the large ones, so that means they are even less effective at range. So what exactly is needed here? Well, obviously you could just make them better overall, more comparable to their larger brethren, but I think that's pretty boring, to be honest. I think differentiating these 2 sizes of weapons give them more of a niche use and, you know, have an actual reason to use one over the other. So one bot might actually want to run the smaller versions over the large ones, but in another case, for a different reason, some other bot would want to run the larger ones instead. So what I'm proposing here is keep the nominal count the same. That's not exactly the biggest problem. Keep the power usage and damage the same, but tighten the spread considerably, keep the same amount of pellets, and increase the maximum range of this thing. Not by some crazy amount. I don't want this thing to be a sniper, of course not. It's still a shotgun. So with this thing's much tighter spread and larger range over the Ion, it's going to be more effective at short range. And I know what some of you are saying, but Awesome Soul, isn't this already a short range weapon? What I consider the scale to be is CQB, which is close quarters combat. So think right up in someone's face, essentially. And then from CQB, we go to short range, medium range, long range, and extra long range. So yes, the ion destabilizer would be a bit more effective at range, but it would still be dealing the current level of damage it has now. So it doesn't have the same burst damage potential as its larger cousin, but it's a bit more viable to run at different ranges. I don't know, what do you guys think about that idea? Is that something you would like to see in the game, or do you have another suggestion that you would like to see personally? Anyways, going back to what I touched on earlier with the sprinter legs, I think that these really need a pretty big, substantial buff, because one of the main things that jump out to me is the fact that sprinter legs are not good on their own. I think you can agree all movement parts should be good on their own. Like hovers, for example. You never hear anybody say, you know, I've got my hovercraft, but I'm going to need to attach wheels for redundancy. Or a plane, for example. You never hear anybody saying, wow, you know what? My wings keep falling off far too easily, so you know what I need? I need to attach rotor blades for redundancy. That's definitely something I need to do. So then why is it that sprinter legs need something else to actually make them viable? The other problem is that the mech legs, their closest sibling, is almost better in every way. They have far more health than they do per CPU. They have a built-in armor bonus, which the sprinter legs have 0% of, and their top speeds are actually very close. And as many have pointed out, the mega mech legs with their built-in large speed boost get up to around 10+%, just as is. And yes, sure they look ugly and are fairly hard to build with at times, but really, if you want to make a sprinter-ish bot, you're kind of better off going with the mega mech legs. Unless you worry about aesthetics, like myself, and will of course be toughing it through as a sprinter bot just because you like the look of them. It's been a sad little while for sprinters. So what can we do to address these problems? Well, for starters, we need to fix the bugs that are wrong with them. The first of which is the after jump stop. Now, they've always had this as a feature. That's not the problem. What is the problem is that with recent updates, they have now completely stopped all momentum entirely upon landing. Previously, you would land, stop for a split second, lose some of your speed, and then start running again. And that was fine. The reason that it's in the game, if you weren't aware, is because sprinter legs, unlike mech legs, have a long jump instead of a high jump. So if they didn't have this short stopping, steadying factor, then we would see players constantly jumping around as sprinters, and that would look very odd. Your main mobility should actually come from the main movement method of that movement part, and not something that's there to increase your mobility. But yes, little tangent aside, now with the bug that's going on, it basically grabs your legs out of the sky, holds onto your feet, and slams them to the ground. And it holds onto your feet for about 1 or 2 seconds before you can go. It's very sudden and very unnatural feeling. The second bug that's with it is the crouching bug. Previously with the sprinters, prior to the speed boost update, when their speed got reworked, something got messed up with the numbers on their crouch speed. Previously, as a sprinter, yes, you would lose some speed when you crouched, but nowhere near as much speed as you lose now. You go from around 160 when standing to now 40 miles per hour when crouching. It was nowhere near this big of a drop. I think it was about 20 or 30 miles per hour less previously when crouching. So yes, FreeJam, if you are listening, please fix those bugs. But it's not only the bugs that are holding this thing back. Simply because this is a high CPU part, and they are incredibly large, so you're really only going to be wanting to put 2 on a bot. These are a mech-style leg, after all, and what do mechs have? 2 legs. But with the amount of health they have, or lack thereof, they are incredibly frail. Even with any health boost, they're still very easy to take out. On top of that, they are painfully slow, especially compared to what they used to be. And in a way, this is kind of a comparison problem, because now mech legs have been incredibly buffed these past few updates. They are now blazingly fast compared to what they used to be, and only slightly slower than the sprinter legs. So with a part that is supposed to be fast, It's got Sprinter in the title. Why do I need to invest an insane amount of CPU in speed boost just to get it back to the speed it was before the update? Anyways, guys, that will do it for today's episode. I know I've kind of touched on the whole Sprinter problem before, but that was a few updates back, and honestly, it still needs to be said. So hopefully if all of you out there agree with me on the Sprinter problem, then let FreeJam know. But yes, with that being said, I of course have been the Awesome Soul. I thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.